welcome back to the channel today, guys, as we talk about another fantastic episode of Hell's Paradise today. But before we get into this episode, I do want to say that it turns out that unfortunately I was right last week when I was saying that, I thought after that episode that people would not be rocking with Sagiri all that much, wouldn't really like her after what happened. And unfortunately, I turned out to be right. Because after my episode, I went and looked online and saw that just a lot of people were just not liking her after that. They're calling her trash and all that. And I just couldn't believe it, because that is just the furthest thing from the truth. And I love that this episode kind of showed people that, no, Sagiri's got a lot going on. Because here's the thing. Sagiri's actually one of my favorite characters from this series. I really like her as a character. And I think this episode was great at really building her up more, to have more confidence in herself, to not let others define how she wants to live her life. That's literally the theme of the episode today. And I just really enjoyed it. This whole episode, honestly, was kind of just girl power. And I was here for it, honestly. It was a good episode. So let's just get straight into it, so I can explain to you guys why I like this episode so much, and talk about Hell's Paradise episode 5 today. Now, our episode today begins with a nightmare. Sagiri's, in fact, as we see her father looking at her with disappointment in her eyes as she wakes up in a cold sweat. And as she wakes up confused, we see Genji there as he tells her that we're in a cave in the island right now. You were poisoned by the butterfly's scales and lost consciousness. And as she leaves the cave to try to get her bearings, we see that everyone's waiting outside for her to get up. And as she asks them all what they're doing, Gabimaru tells her flat out, I'm preparing dinner. Duh. As she asks him, weren't you the one that said we were short on time, though? As he tells her, well, I had my reservations. And it's here now that Sagiri's awake again. It's time to go over the information that we do have on this island, because there's a pretty decent amount to go over, actually. As Gabimaru says, alright, to cut to the chase, I didn't see anything promising in the area. But since we don't know much about this island, I'm not really sure what we should be looking for. As Yuzuriya asks him, does that mean you know something about the elixir of life then? As Gabimaru decides to lie and say no. As Gabimaru adds, what I did learn while gathering ingredients for our dinner was about the flora on this island. The species are mixed, but they're mostly ordinary plants found on the mainland. I did see a few unfamiliar ones though too. As Genji says, we're near Ryukyu. They could be flowers from there. As Gabimaru says, maybe. But what caught my attention was the fact that I found several flowers resembling the samurai who had become flowers. And adds, if most of the plants on this island used to be human, then we can guess what happened to them. And just imagine that, guys, walking through this forest, just knowing the fact that all the plants around you were most likely people in the past. That is so unnerving, actually. Just imagine that real quick. As naturally, they're a little grossed out by this fact, as we all would be. As Gabimaru continues and says, in any case, I didn't find anything like this Mandarin-looking thing in this picture. As Senta tells him, perhaps we shouldn't fixate on that illustration too much. The terms Tokijiko no Kaganomi and Paradise used by the shogunate were originally concepts from different cultures. The stone statues gathered around the island closely resemble Buddhist and Taoist figures. Worrying about religious consistency might be a waste of time, meaning that all the information they knew before going to the island, you kind of have to throw that out the window, because now you're here and you have to believe what you see with your own eyes. And it's here Sagiri tells them all that, I find it hard to believe people could actually live on this island. Both the monsters and insects here are far too dangerous for humans. Their ecology and behavior are really mysterious. As she adds, when I cut them, it felt as though they had flesh and bones, but organs and, Reproductive organs were not there. As she adds, their appearance are just weird in general. Parts of other animals are stacked on top of humanoid forms. I'm not really sure how to describe it. And honestly, guys, I'm not either. As Senta adds, they're all like malformed gods. Both the island and the monsters are like that. They're terrifying, but they're all not that smart. Too unrealistic to be natural, too artificial to be mystical. Mystical. It's as though we've been thrown into some kind of sick mandala. But with all this information at hand, one thing is very clear. As Gabimaru says, creatures that can survive without organs point to immortality. It's starting to seem possible the elixir of life is on this island. As Senta says, Gabimaru is right. We should begin by examining the monster's ecology. We need to find out where and how the monsters live. It'll be dangerous, but that's currently our only clue regarding the elixir. Meaning that before they do anything else, they need to understand how this island operates and the monsters along with it. But it's here as we transition to later in that day, as we draw near our first day on the island. It hasn't even been a day yet, guys. We see Genji approach Sagiri and tell her flat out, "You should take a boat back to the mainland. I shall assume your responsibilities." As he tells her, "You're a daughter of the Yamada clan first, and a samurai second. As a woman, it's your duty to marry the next head of the clan. The shogunate certainly wouldn't object to me taking over your role. In your current condition, you'll die." And it's here Sagiri tells him, "I'm not leaving. A warrior's duty is to complete their job." As he tells her, "Your intentions are admirable, but face the facts here." As he asks her, "Do you currently have the strength to kill Gabimaru? And your sword, it just happened to be available, didn't it?" And as we see, she took one of the swords from the inmate that Gabimaru killed in the previous episode. He tells her that a sword is a warrior's heart, and you've already lost the heart of the Yamada clan. As he adds, "Your sword skills are exceptional, no doubt, but that's as a sword tester and executioner. This situation calls for skills in battle. You're clearly not strong enough for this island. It's beyond your limits as a woman." And trust me, guys, even when I watched this scene before doing this video, I thought to myself, damn, you really didn't have to add that last part. That last part is fucked. You gotta realize, though, it's a different time period. It's a different time period. But it's here as Senta arrives on the scene, he chimes in and says, "Would it really be that easy to return, though?" As he tells them, most samurai sent to this island don't return. Even if you use the boat, I'm not sure you'd be able to escape easily. And it's here we transition to some people doing just that, as we see the one duo we did not get last week, as we hear, "We need to get away from the island." As we meet Tenzai, rank 10 of the Yamada Asamon, and the criminal he's guarding, Norugai, as she says, "You're just gonna get wet relying on brute force and exhaust yourself, you know." As she adds, "Samurai are captivated by things that don't exist. They don't know how to be smart." As he says, "Wow, how informative! Is that the wisdom of the Sanka?" As she says, "My grandpa taught that to me. He said to always reduce inefficiency." As she adds, "Even if we're able to leave the island, I'm going to be executed if we don't have the elixir, As Tenzai says, don't worry about that. I'll talk to the shogunate for you personally. I promise I'll see you home safe, Norugai. Of all the criminals participating, you deserve to live the most." As we see that she's kind of taken aback by what he just said, because it is surprising. And let me just add, before we continue any further, that what an interesting pair these two really are. Keep your eyes out for them, guys. It's here all of a sudden that they suddenly see a giant ship in the distance and think that they're saved, until we realize that these ships have been destroyed. As Tenzai realizes, could these be all the ships that attempted to leave the island? And it's here all of a sudden as they notice a presence among the rubble. Things are about to get a little wild. And it's here as Tenzai draws his sword, it causes Narugai to panic as we see the creature suddenly attacks them. As she tells him, "What are you doing? Most animals are sensitive to shining objects and hostility. If we would have turned back right away, we would have been fine." As we see them surrounded by giant tentacles. Good old anime, guys. And it's here as they're trying to escape this creature. We're going to have a flashback sequence to Narugai's past as we hear, "If you die, the Sanka bloodline will end." As she thinks to herself, we don't believe in things that don't exist. But I can't help but wonder, is this my divine punishment? Because it's here as we dive deeper into the flashback, she came across these samurais in the past that were looking for refuge as she took them into their village, but they ended up killing everyone, calling them imashis, as we realize that it's a term for those who refuse to submit to the shogunate, as they live as unique cultures in the mountains. Under Tokugawa-sama's rule, they're considered insurrectionists, as we see that they also kidnapped her to be executed after the fact. And it's here while locked up, she meets Tenzai for the first time, as he tells her, "If there's a way for you to live, then you should live," as he shows her the scroll. And it's here in this moment she had to ask herself a very tough question. Should I live so the village's bloodline doesn't end? Or should I die to atone for the villagers, as she blames herself wholeheartedly for their deaths? As we see that even now, she still hasn't made that decision just yet. But it's here in this moment, as they're running for their lives, we come across a familiar face, as we see that Kisho is among the casualties of people here. But there's no time to grieve, as they're suddenly surrounded by even more tentacles. And it's here she looks at Kisho's body. She's reminded of the trauma she went through before, and how she feels the villagers resent her for what she's done, as she freezes on the spot and tells Tenzai, "Forget me. If you're gonna flee, then flee alone." As she adds, "I've been wondering if I should live or die this whole time. I finally get it. This is my divine punishment for killing Grandpa and the others." But as Tenzai saves her life here, he says, "Why does that mean you have to die, though? You said samurai are stupid, right? Why don't you explain it to me?" And it's here she explains to him that the Sanka convention is to live for the mountain and the village. I'm the sole survivor. Everyone else died because of me. I don't deserve to live. But Tenzai's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Let's just say that. As he saves her again and says, "Look, I don't understand what you're saying. But until I do, I'm not leaving." As he tells her, "I'm not asking about your grandpa or your village. I'm asking if you want to die or not." And it's here upon thinking about that more and realizing that that's not what her grandpa would have wanted. She says, "No, I don't want to die. I want to go back to the mountains." As he tosses her a sword and says, "Then we only have one thing we need to do right now. Do whatever it takes to survive." As he says, "Look, there's a usable boat over there. We'll break through this and we'll get on that." As we see that with newfound resolve, they both fight for their lives. And as we transition to our next scene, we see that they just barely make it back to the island. As Tenzai says, we escaped the monsters for now, but we ended up right back here at square one. As Narugai says, the currents in this area probably all flow back to the island. Unless we find a current leading outside, we won't be able to return even with the elixir. And the monsters out there, they're clearly different from the ones that were on the island. The mountain of grounded ships seemed to be surrounding the island as well. There were more ships out there than just the expeditions sent over the past few years. Meaning that there were clearly more people that knew about this than they thought, and for all intents and purposes, they're all trapped here for right now. And it's here as they're trying to clean the blood off of them, because they're all covered in blood, obviously. Tenzai says, your form seems rather girlish, you might say. As Narugai says, that's because I am a girl, you idiot. And shows him in my favorite way possible. And as he starts freaking out, she says, man, samurai really do love to fixate on things that don't matter, huh? And it's here after we have that little incident behind us. Tensai says, first, we need to circle the island and find a current leading out. As Narugai says, we shouldn't do anything until we've secured an escape route. We should gather allies for our return trip. And it's here later that night, we transition back to Gabimaru and Sagiri, as he tells her, are you gonna watch me all night long? As she tells him, I'm just taking turns with the other Asamon watching the prisoners. And it's here as they both pretty awkwardly try to ask each other something. She eventually says, alright, you go first. As Gabimaru asks her pretty awkwardly, are you feeling better, by the way? As he says, the insect's poisons acted pretty quickly because of the wound I gave you, right? So I thought that I'd, help you out, As she realizes that Gabimaru has kind of changed a bit since coming to this island. And he's changed because of her. As he adds, I owe you a favor as well. Because of you, I calmed down. I steeled my resolve. Rushing in randomly was too dangerous. And if the Iwagakari are coming, then I'd better prepare a counterattack. As he tells her, I decided I'd live with my wife. A long life, way longer than this job will last. And I won't run from those who try to get in my way. I'll face them head on. As Sagiri says, wow, you really are strong, aren't you? But he adds, so are you though. You're stronger than me. And upon hearing this, she is instantly taken aback. As Gabimaru tells her, I'm never wrong about this stuff. I don't know if it's your heart, technique, strength, or influenced by your nature. It wasn't just my impression. You have a more practical strength. As he thinks to himself, I wonder what that feeling was I felt. I don't know. As he tells her, you look surprised that I would say something like that. As she says, I am. And it's here that Gabimaru actually drops a bit of wisdom on her as he says, the villagers used to say, you can't know how strong you are until you've experienced a lot for yourself. People understand themselves less than we might think. And it's here after hearing that, Sagiri finds her resolve. Because as we transition to the next day, we see that she tells Genji flat out, I'm not leaving the island. As he says, that's ridiculous. You're a woman. You should return safely and bear children for the Yamada clan. And it's here Sagiri tells him, that's what I've always been told. People regard a woman who wields a sword with astonishment and ridicule. You're a woman, what are you doing? They say. And more than anything, my father sometimes looked at me with disappointment. If I live as the daughter of neck chopper Asa, I'm scorned by outsiders. If I live as a warrior of the Yamada clan, I'm shunned by my family. And if I leave now, it'll follow me for the rest of my life. As Genji tries to tell her it's natural for women to have women's responsibilities. But Sagiri tells him, I can't stand to be looked at like that. Please see me as a samurai. I know I'm weak and inexperienced, but I at least want to decide how I'll live for myself. I'm certain both men and women, or perhaps all people, regardless of status, feel that way. Very true. I do. But it's here, unfortunately, that we see that Genji is a fucking douchebag. As he says, that was unbearable to listen to. That isn't how a samurai lives. As he says, this island's a battlefield. It's no place for women and children. As he actually tries to strike her down. And she actually ends up stealing his sword from him. And he is heated. But suddenly, in this moment, we see the appearance of Rokuroto. And this boy is hungry as he gouges out Genji's side. And with that abrupt ending, our episode ends. And man, guys, just what another great episode we had today of Hell's Paradise. With this episode, we now know the motivation of basically all of our prisoners on the island and what they really want to try to accomplish while they're here. We learned that Noruga was actually a falsely accused criminal and was arrested against her will, as we see that she still blames herself for the death of her people, which she kind of did cause in a way, but that doesn't mean that she should blame herself for it. And we see Sagiri, again, getting even more development as she finally decides to decide for herself how to live her own life and not have other people tell her how to live. It's honestly really great. And these past couple episodes with developing our characters have just been fantastic, honestly. And I'm very excited for the next episode because things are only going to pick up from here. So let me know your thoughts on this episode down below, guys, because I would love to hear them. But until next time, I hope you have a great day, week, month, and year. And until then, deuces, have a blessed day, and I will see you guys next time.